Hello, Wranglers, and today we're going to be doing a request, and it's a really interesting story, and some of you have heard of it, some of you haven't. It's called the Dyatlov Pass Mystery, and we're going to jump right into it. So I hope you enjoy this, and if you do, like, subscribe to the YouTube thing, and we'll be grateful for you. But let me jump right into the story. In 1959, in Russia, in the south part of Russia, a group of experienced hikers went out to do some hiking there from a local Polytechnic University around there, and they were all very experienced hikers, I can tell you. In fact, they had kind of a class rating system, and these guys were class 2, and they were going for their class 3, so they'd done plenty of hiking and backwoods type stuff. I guess it'd be sort of like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts for adults, and their leader was an Igor Dyatlov, and let's take a look at the hikers here. Here they all are, and I'm not about to try to read all of their names. That will make this video long and painful and confusing. And so these 10 hikers, excuse me, yeah, it's 10 hikers that set out, and they basically rode in to start with. They rode on trains, and then horse carts, and then uh, other various means of transportation. The farther into the rural areas they got, then they're finally to the point where they're walking along. That's how they're getting around, as they're finally starting their hike. But it was very remote, so they were headed toward a place called the Mountain of the Dead in Dyatlov Pass, or Dead Man's Mountain. There's several translations for the thing. And one of the hikers, let me put the hikers back up here again. I believe his name was Yuri. I see his here. And again, I'm not really great with another one of the It was one of the Yuris, possibly. They he basically one of the hikers got either sick or hurt his knee or something like that, and he had to beg off the hike, and he couldn't go along with him. So only 9 proceeded along, into the wilderness here. And here's a picture of them going into the wilderness. This is actually real pictures of them. They had cameras with them, and they had notebooks, and they took notes and stuff like that, and diaries, and they're hiking up into the no man's land in Russia, and this is where they are headed. This is the actual picture of the mountain that was their destination, and we'll come back to that picture. That's pretty creepy, if you ask me. But anyway, they did that, and as they're winding their way through there, they did take lots of photos, and they encountered the local natives, who were the Mansi population, and the Mansi population were known to be relatively friendly. And here's a picture of what they looked like back then. They basically kind of more or less warned the hikers and said, we call it the Mountain of the Dead, be careful, kind of thing. But they are agrarian and hunters and stuff like that. But yeah, they went through the Mansi village, and then and the Mansi also warned them to be aware of the mink, Menk, which was the Russian version of the Bigfoot, I guess you'd say, or a Yeti or something like that. And they chalked it up to folklore. Well, anyway, they reached their destination, and they decided to camp, and they camped on the side of that mountain there, and they set up their tent, and they were, doing whatever. Sometime during the night, they all abandoned the tent rather quickly. They basically, excuse my wobble here. They didn't go out the front door of the tent. They slashed a hole in the side, they slashed a hole in the top, and they all bolted out of the tent, in whatever they were wearing at the time. None of it was cold weather gear. Some of it was basically down to their underwear, and some of them was just casual clothes. And they headed away from the tent. Now, there's some people that say they ran away from the tent in a panic. Well, there's some evidence that shows they didn't just run away from the tent in a panic, and let me show you this. A month later, when they found their footprints, here's some of the footprints that they found, and you can kind of see how they were not really running, but they said that the footprints looked like they were walking in an orderly fashion down the hill away from the tent, and maybe that's as fast as they could go. But they basically got down the mountain, and the group kind of broke up and broke off into different pieces, and that's when some strange things started to happen. Um, basically, all of them died of hypothermia. It says here that five of them, all of them had hypothermia. Four of them were intoxicated and all that kind of thing. Now, they have pictures of the bodies on the internet, and you can Google them and see what happened. But some horrible things. This happened on February 26th, and they were found some months later, and the bodies weren't in good shape. Okay, let me tell you that. Some of them had really bad burns on them, on their hands. One of the ladies was missing her tongue and her eyes. Several of them were missing their eyes. Some of them were, their fingers were worn. Basically, you could barely recognize their hands. Some of them just had the slightest abrasions. One had a crushed skull impact, had a really severe skull fracture. One of them's chest had caved in, and just some pretty bad stuff here. And what some basically the different groups died in different ways as they had split up. One group had tried to climb up a tree, and I guess they were so desperate to do it they got parts of their skin stuck in the tree. And then some of them, had tried to start a fire, and they froze to death over a dying fire. Some of them, there was a group of three that looked like they'd been in a car wreck. Okay, their bodies were bashed up, and in a lot of cases of these bodies, the eyes and the lips and all that were missing, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit here. And some of the two of the men had basically registered with radioactive were radioactive. Now, these two men actually happened to work in a radioactive, maybe I should say, one of them was a weapons factory, one of them was a processing factory, so they were exposed to radiation in their normal lives, and they think that then these were the two that showed up with the radiation. The Let me see what else here. So the Soviet government went and they investigated this, and they crawled all over the mountain, and they couldn't come up with a decent explanation. So they said an unknown compelling force killed the hikers, drove them from their tent and killed them. And that's not much of an answer. An unknown compelling force that doesn't tell you anything. Hell, it could have been somebody could have made a real bad fart that's so bad, you had to abandon the tent or something. I don't know. I mean, who the hell knows what an unknown compelling force can be? So let me hook this back up here, and uh, now we're going to get to the point where the different theories come into play. And one of the other bodies, one of the more interesting things they found on one of the bodies is he had a lump of flesh in his mouth that he'd bitten from his own hand. He didn't bite his hand off; he had bitten the flesh off of his hand there, and I'm not sure why that happened. But let's start looking at some of the theories. Russia claims that they solved this. We'll start with that one. They claim it was an avalanche, and that basically the kids or the hikers knew that this avalanche, they could hear it coming, and they jumped out and they ran down the hill to get away from it. Now, I don't buy that, and it sounds like the most reasonable, logical explanation, but there's too many things that are wrong with it. First of all, and I'll tell you why I don't buy it. When I was in college, I did several semesters of what they called of meteorology, and one of my entire semesters was an avalanche workshop. We went up and studied how avalanches are caused and how they're made and how fast they move and all of this. You can't outrun an avalanche. You just cannot do that. If there's a real big one coming, you can't get away. You're going to have to try and literally swim it, and you're probably not going to make it, and you're gonna be smothered. So if they heard this thing coming and they tried to bail out, I don't know why they wouldn't have gone out the front door. But also the bodies were found relatively with not that much snow on them, just a few centimeters of snow. They weren't smothered like you find avalanche bodies months and sometimes years later, where they get buried and stay buried in these kind of environments. And the that just, and also you've seen the picture of the mountain here. Let me see, put that back up. Why isn't my mountain working here? Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. Yeah, the mountain there. It's not a got a hasn't got a really severe slope, and he doesn't have to have a severe slope to have an avalanche. But that's what they just decided. It was an avalanche, and that's all there is to it. And we're sticking to our story. I think an avalanche had something to do with it, and I'll tell you, and not a big avalanche. I'm talking. I'll explain my theory in the end here. Um, the other theories we've got going on that are pretty interesting about this, I wanted to is it was a one of them operatives in the or one of the hikers was an operative with the CIA or the KGB, and some kind of a deal went wrong, and they had to exterminate these guys. Well, that is possible, but how did they do it? We didn't hear about bullet wounds being in them. We didn't hear about that. You know, they it, I don't know how the circumstances that would make them run out, cut the hole in the side of a tent to run out, and then if the KGB and the CIA or somebody like that was doing this, I think they probably would have done it a little more efficiently than I don't know than that. It just doesn't. Whatever that is, it could be possible. It could be very possible, but there's just a lot of things that it would indicate a lot more chaos than something like that. Than other than maybe one guy sitting in there and pulling a gun out and starting to pop people. But then we would have found some dead bodies in the tent. They didn't find any dead bodies in the tent, and they didn't find any guns or any firearms or anything like that that I know of around them. Um, the One of the coolest things that I think happened. I don't think this actually killed them, okay, but I think this is one of the coolest things, and you hardly ever hear this mentioned. One of the hikers wrote in their diary, and I don't remember which one it is here because it's hard for me to find it. But you'll stumble across it if you look. They talked about the Russian Yeti, the Menk, Menk, the Mansi people warned him about, and one of the hikers wrote in his diary, "We know now that the mink is real." And let me show you what they photographed. Oh, dang, I did the wrong button. There we go. This is the photograph they took. And they said, "We know now that the mink is real." So, whatever this thing is, was following them around. And, or I don't know if it was following them, but it saw them. They saw it. They took this picture. If it's like all of these hominid pictures, they're fuzzy and or whatever. But this was this was a long time ago, 1959. Poor camera, harsh conditions. So they took this picture and wrote that we know now the mink is real. And this was several days before they died. I think this part is really interesting, and it's often just kind of brushed aside. They will talk about a Yeti attack, but they won't talk about this picture, and they won't talk about that thing, that note left in the diary, which is fascinating to me. Just the fact that they bothered to record that is pretty darn cool. Now, other theories we've got are aliens. I don't think it was aliens doing this. Why would you know they stumbled across some secret alien base or something? If they did that, I don't think the aliens are that. I don't know, that immature and amateurish just to chase them out of a tent and let them freeze to death. I mean, probably would have just zapped them or something, or abducted them, or who the heck knows. Don't think it was aliens. The One of the things they took a picture of that night. It was actually, they believe it was that night. This was actually, there was actually ongoing bombing testing in that area, parachute bombs by the Russian, or the Russian military was testing parachute bombs. These are bombs that fall slowly on parachutes and then go boom. Okay, and this is one of the last photos they had in their camera. That's a scratch on the bottom. But this is what they photographed, and we don't have any idea what this is. It's bright light. It could be a flashlight. It could be a campfire. It could be a campfire and a flashlight. It could be a million things. It could be one of these bombs. This could be a flare. I mean, this, to me, the way this thing looks, just kind of reminds me of the general gut feeling is this is a flare, okay, and then that kind of thing. So I think there might be some pretty good evidence that this actually was happening up there. Because they all had claimed to have seen some orange orbs and stuff that night, and they're on nearing the mountain when they were doing it. They had talked about that, and then they took this photo. So we're not sure what these orange orbs were. We're not sure what this photo is for darn sure. But it could have been these parachute bombs they were testing, and that can cause some seismic activity, if you like. And it that's possibly one of the reasons they left the tent. Maybe this place was getting hit heavy with these parachute bombs, and they just decided we got to get out of this tent before we die. Maybe one went off near, like right near them, and they just got up and like, we're out. We got to get out. Okay. And then when that subsided, they were going to try to go back, and they froze to death before they could get back in there. That's a possibility. I mean, that with this being the last picture, I don't think that would be unreasonable. I think it makes more sense than just a regular old avalanche. But that's not my favorite theory here. What another guy talks about, um, there's some, I can't remember the guy's, there's a name, but there's a gentleman, and I don't, he had written an article. I didn't include it because it just isn't that. I don't think this. He goes that the certain air currents whipping around this mountain cause an infrasonic, meaning it's too low to hear, a sound that is too low for the human ear to hear. But these infrasonic sounds can cause you to go crazy and be just, and freak out and all that kind of things. And he thinks that the wind whipping around the mountain caused an infrasonic effect that drove them all crazy at the same time, and they bailed out of the tent and died is his thing. But here's what I think possibly happened. Now, these are the different theories, and we can hear. You can chime in and tell me why one of your favorites or what you like, or if you do think the Russians are dead on with just a plain avalanche. Let me show you their tent. Okay, this wasn't taken the night of the avalanche. This was taken some point before. This is their tent. Okay, and what's interesting? What do you see that's kind of interesting about this? Take a look for a minute. Okay, we got the tent. All right, we've got the stovepipe over here. This was a homemade stovepipe by one of the hikers. Okay, a homemade heating stove, and he's got a venting pipe here that is to vent the smoke and all the other stuff from the flame. It vents it out. Um, but this is what they were staying in and what they caught. What they cut their way out of on it. I think something happened with this stove, and I think either one of these parachute bombs, maybe, or they dug into the side of the mountain a bit too much, just a little, just enough, or something like that, or a minor avalanche or something or other. Not enough to wipe the tent out because they found the tent. I mean, it wasn't that deep under the snow, neither were the bodies. Something enough to cause this stove to for them to have a problem with it. Like maybe it got knocked over and started burning things. Burned somebody. Maybe it was. They were trying to get it taken apart in it because some of them had severe burns on them, and this could have been a big issue with the stove. Maybe the stove was getting pushed towards them, from some snow that was moving down slowly, and they were trying to get it taken apart and put out before they did it. This is what I think was happening. Is I think something happened like this. Maybe this stovepipe part broke off. The tent was starting to fill with smoke and gas and all the other dangerous shit that can come out of the burning the wood and stuff or coal or whatever they're burning, and they had to get out of there in a hurry. And I'm not sure why they didn't get out the front door, but maybe they couldn't find it. That would be if that place had filled with smoke and it filled with fast, they might not be able to work the zippers or the whatever it was. So they just grabbed their knives, cut a hole in the top and in the side, and they all got out, hoping that this would after the tent was done or the stove was done being a problem or whatever, they could return to the tent, get things set back up and all that. But it didn't happen that way. They cut the hole in the side of the tent. All of them kind of went down the mountain as a group. They got split up and they all died. This is what I think happened here. Now, I'm not sure what knocked the stove over. Like I told you I had three ideas there, but this is what I think happened in Dyatlov Pass. But this is a very interesting case, and you're gonna hear more as we discuss it about different parts of their bodies, being mission and all that. And there was some that said all the bodies were radioactive. What I've seen, there's only two that were radioactive, and and some of the relatives claimed the bodies looked different. They had a strange orange tint to them when they were getting buried and all that. And I don't know. That could have been. There's multiple reasons for that, but their stomachs. Oh, let me see. When they found them, some of them had one of them that said she had blood in her stomach, like a bunch of blood in her stomach. But then you read the autopsy report, and it just says um, uh, a slimy substance with some with basically a slimy substance with some blood. Now, if she had eaten or had been underwater, which several of them had been for a while, for the months while the snow was melting, your lungs could fill with all kinds of crap, or your body, your internal cavity. So they weren't sure what that was. And predators tend to eat the soft parts of your. I forgot to even get into that. Yeah, that where the eyes and the tongue and parts of the face are missing. Predators will go after the softer, more exposed parts of your body. So when things like your eyes, or you see a dead creature and their eyes are gone and their tongues are gone, those are soft, and bugs and birds and all that will go after them and eat them. I think that's why those things were that way, because and that's a very common thing. You don't need to have your tongue and eyes ripped out by aliens or minks or CIA to make that make sense. That happens. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but this gives you an introduction to the Dyatlov Pass mystery, and the Russians claim to have solved it. A lot of people are skeptical, so put your insight to it. Let's hear your comments. Let's hear what you have to say. What details did I miss that you want to hear? Which ones did I say that you liked? But anyway, thanks again. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.